Hey guys, today, I'll be continuing the RPG game tutorial. Sorry it took so long, but I've added a lot to make up for that. As you can see, there's now levels. It's just the base system, so it doesn't look the best yet, but it works really well. And at the top of my screen there's a few new scripts. We will be adding them all today. Sadly, they aren't the most simple, but I've tried my best to make them easy to read and understand. This video will mainly be focused on the mobs and swords, since the swords now have hitboxes. Here's how they work. Anything within the sword's radius which is easily adjustable will take damage, and the mobs also respawn now. It's pretty nice, though sometimes extras may spawn. Here's a quick preview on how it works. We get XP and the mob respawns. Usually it's a different one, but it can be the same. Now let's actually start scripting lol. But first, we need to add a few things to replicated storage. Again, make a new folder, call it assets, then add another folder inside the assets and call it tools. This will be used to store any tools in your game. If you have any which you put in starter pack, move them into here. Disable the script inside of the tools, as we will no longer need them since this video we are making a new system for the swords. But keep them in case you need their damage, amounts or cooldowns. After you are done, feel free to delete them. You are also going to need the sound and animation in the tools handle. Don't delete it yet so you can use the ID soon. After we are done you can delete it if you want. Now add a new module script to the modules folder and name it swords. Inside that module, add another module script and call it hitboxes. This will make sense in a minute. So inside the swords module, write tables like this, but adjust it so it works for your swords. Name the table. For example, what is named the same as what in the assets tools. In the second, name variable the same thing. Then change the damage and the cooldown to your liking. Put your animation ID in the animate variable, and also put your sound ID in the sound variable. Here's a quick example. So I'll just rename the two names first. So let's say I wanted to call it another sword. I would type that same thing into the name variable, and then adjust the damage and cooldown. Very overpowered sword at 100 damage and 15 cooldown lol. Anyways, then I would need to add my animation ID in, and also the sound ID too. Though I wouldn't recommend adding too many swords yet, cause when we make the inventory, we will definitely need to add more to this. Anyways, we can worry about that later. I'll just remove this since I don't need it because it was just an example lol. Now let's start working on the hitboxes module script. Yeah, this is a pretty big script. Since I'm nice, I'll leave this one in the description lol. But I'll still explain it quickly since it's a long script and it's probably better you know how it works so you can adjust it to your liking. Also, don't forget that swords module must be written correctly for this script to work. So this is where the main hitbox is created. For now, the sizes and stuff are set at a number for every sword. But if you want, you can change that for each one somehow lol. You can change the distance to what you want, as that's how far away the hitbox is from the player. This is in studs, so try not to make it too far lol. This checks if the player is in studio so they can see the hitbox clearly for testing, but you can make it so it's invisible outside of Roblox Studio. This just creates the animation so you don't have to lol. That's why we needed the animation ID inside of the script instead of the actual animation object. This loads the sound up, same reason why we needed the sound ID in the new swords module. Now let's move on to making the sword deal damage. The damage table makes sure the same mob doesn't take damage loads of times from one hitbox. This was a problem the old system had. Now here we check if the hitbox has hit a mob and it's not, the player it's hit, then dealing damage to the mob. The damage amount is the one we put inside the module. It also gives the mob a last hit tag, but I'll tell you what that does later. This finishes up the function, destroying the hitbox, waits the sword's cooldown, and setting the debounce to false. Now let's quickly add something to the mob's module script we added last time. Just add this part of the script, a tag which is a string value, called last that parented to the mob's humanoid clone a humanoid, which we are going to need in the script like I said lol. Also add this in the mobs module. We are going to use it in a second in the next script. It's just so we can track how many mobs are currently in one area. So now let's go to the main server script and add 3 modules. We will use the level module soon. So first copy this function. It's for the leveling system. I recommended you pause and copy each part carefully since this script is longer but easier to understand. All it does is create something similar to a leader stat, but the player cannot see it on the leaderboard. Just note that this doesn't save yet and we will do that in another video. This part connects a function when the player joins in, uses the function we just made. This will initialize the player's stats. Above that, this gets all the tools in replicated storage and gives them the ability to use hitboxes. We will change this later in the series, but for now this is how we will test tools. Before we continue the other parts of this script, let's go and type everything we need for the levels module. It's a very short but simple script. It should be perfect for what we need next. You can adjust however you want, but don't forget to return the next level requirement. You should probably keep the level-up function the same though so no bugs appear. You can copy what I wrote if you want, if not try to structure it the same way so we can reuse this module later. Anyways, now we will go to the UI and client script. Pause to copy this down. I will also leave a model of the UI in the description. You can change it to how you like. If you want to make your own UI, feel free to. Now let's begin scripting. So here's the script. You don't need to type the format function as I will leave it in the description. We will use this script only for display purposes, but maybe other things too. Everything else will be on the server to make sure there are very little vulnerabilities. Anyways, first type in these main variables. Next, we need to add this function to the script. It will update the XP UI and tween it smoothly. You can adjust this however you like. Make sure if you're using your own UI, everything is set correctly. Anyways, I'll explain this function. So this just sets your XP amount and then the required XP to level up, which we set in the levels module. If you want the numbers to be perfect without decimals when using the format function, put 0 so it has no decimal places. By the way, here's what it would look like if you added 1 decimal. Yeah, not very cool. But you can change it to your liking. This just displays your level. Pretty nice. This tweens the XP frame, so when we gain or lose XP it will nicely tween into place. You can copy my tween if you want, or you can change it to your liking. Here's the other side of the tween. That is almost everything. Now let's make it so it calls the function when the script loads, and when the player gains XP or a level. I've made it so a sound plays when the player gains a level. You can also add this and you can add this to when the player gains XP. The sound ID I used is 6,079,105,785. Don't forget to call this function when the script loads. If you don't, then this won't work lol. Now let's go back to the main server script. This first function is a bit confusing, but I'll explain it all. It only needs to take the parameters of the spawns. This is just so we make sure that we aren't spawning too many extra mobs. Next, we get a table of every possible mob which can spawn in that specific area. After that, we use this new table to spawn a random mob in. They all have the same chances however. That's basically it for that function. Let's move on to the next part of the script. This next part is a lot longer. You can pause to copy each part as we get to it. The top part just loops through the spawns in the workspace, and then we add values to them to set the max spawnable mobs and the current spawn mobs. You can change the max to whatever you want. However, I wouldn't recommend making it too high. Don't change the current spawned or it will mess with the spawning system. Next, we will check when the enemy inside the spawn part dies to give a set amount of EXP. This will also lower the current spawn mobs by 1. And this uses that last hit tag we added not too long ago. Also, add this warning to the script, just in case you make an error so it doesn't break the entire game. Let's move on now. This just uses the max amount of mobs to spawn, subtracts it by the current amount of mobs, and then spawns them into the game. If you still use the old mob spawning system, which was very inefficient, I recommend you remove it and replace it with this one. Next, this checks when the current mob spawn value changes, and we'll check if there is less mobs than the max, then spawning them in. It's very similar to what we just did, but this has a longer cooldown, so it's not instant but still quite fast. Anyways, that should be it for this script. Now let's quickly just add collision groups, so players and mobs don't collide with each other. Go to Model and then click Advanced, then Collision Groups. Add to Groups, Players and Mobs. To create a new group, click Add Group, then type the 2 group names in. This might be a little confusing, but just make sure mobs and players both have no ticks in the boxes. This makes it so they don't collide, but don't touch the other two, default and studio selectable, or they will just fall out the map and cause errors or something. Default should always have everything ticked. Now let's write a few lines of code to make it work. Type this into the mobs module inside of the spawn mob function. It will get every part inside the mob and give them the collision group. Copy this as we are going to use it to set the players' collisions as well. Replace the word clone with plur character and then set the collision group to players. This was inside the main server script below where we give the players tools BW. And it works. As you can see, we can't collide with the mobs. That's pretty much it for this video. However, sorry this episode took so long to upload. I've been editing it 4 days and making sure it's perfect. I'm not sure when the next episode will release, but it shouldn't take 2 months, maybe 2 weeks at most. Anyways, if you are struggling with anything, join the Discord server in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. And if you have any ideas, suggest them in the comments or Discord server. I may add them in future episodes. That's all for this video. See you soon. Bye.